Over the past 6 years, I have tried growing just about every spring flower that can thrive in our Zone 6 West Michigan climate. Tulips, daffodils, sweet peas, you name it. But this one right here? Well, it might just be my favorite. And truthfully, I never expected it to be. Now, believe it or not, I'm actually talking about pansies. You see, they're a sweet, simple spring flower that has quietly worked its way back into my garden and has completely won me over. After all, it turns out that these little blooms have a lot more to offer than I ever thought possible, including long, delicate stems that look strikingly similar to sweet peas, just without all the extra fuss. Now, if you like to replicate this same kind of success in your own spring garden, well, you're in luck. Because in this video, I'm sharing everything that I've learned about how to grow pansies with strong, tall stems and an abundance of beautiful blooms. So if you're ready, let's get to it. I will be the first to admit that some flowers have a way of circling right back to you. That's at least how it's been with pansies for me. You see, I first tried growing pansies about 3 years ago. I was drawn in by their old-fashioned charm, their delicate faces, and early spring resilience. But truthfully, that first attempt didn't go far. We were just beginning to scale up tulip production at the time, and I was completely stretched thin. I didn't have the time or margin to give them the attention they deserved. And like so many good ideas that year, well, they quietly got pushed aside. But this season, for whatever reason, it felt different. And with more confidence in our spring crops and a little more space to breathe, well, I circled back to pansies. And I'm so glad that I did. Pansies, they might not be the trendiest flower in your Instagram feed, but they're having a quiet resurgence in the cut flower world, and for good reason. I mean, in case you didn't know, pansies, they are cold tolerant and among the earliest flowers that you can plant outside. They're compact and versatile, perfect for garden beds, bulb crates, or pots. They're also available in dreamy, vintage-inspired color palettes, from soft mauves to bold velvets, and they're a beautiful filler or feature bloom in springtime arrangements or even in small bouquets. They bring something gentle and nostalgic to the garden, like a little moment of calm after the long gray stretch of winter, and I'm here for it. Now, if you've never grown pansies from seed, well, don't let the idea intimidate you. With the right timing and a few simple tricks, they're wonderfully approachable even for beginners. So let me walk you through a step-by-step breakdown of how we grow ours here at Two Sisters Flower Farm. Step 1, start indoors and start early. Pansies, they prefer cooler temperatures and take time to mature. And if you're hoping for spring blooms, well, you'll want to start your pansy seeds indoors nice and early, about 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. Here in West Michigan, our last frost usually falls around early to mid-May. So I like to start my pansy seeds in the early part of February. It feels early, I know, especially when there's still snow on the ground, but that extra head start, it makes all the difference for getting those cheerful blooms as soon as spring settles in. To start your seeds, you can use whatever you have on hand. I personally like to use a 72 cell tray filled with a good seed starting mix. When you sow the seeds, sprinkle them right on the surface or just barely cover them. Pansies actually need darkness to germinate, but still, you don't want to bury them too deeply. I also find that using a humidity dome makes a big difference when starting pansy seeds. Pansies, they don't like to dry out during the germination process, and so keeping the moisture consistent is key to getting good sprouting. That humidity dome, it helps lock in humidity and saves you from constantly worrying about whether or not the soil is staying damp enough. Now, if you do need some help with the seed starting process, I encourage you to refer back to this video here, which shares our budget-friendly setup for starting seeds indoors. I'll link that video in the description box below in case you want to review it later. So once your seeds sprout, you can remove the humidity dome and let them grow on from here. Pansies, they like cool roots and grow best when raised in conditions that mimic nature as closely as possible. That means that once they've germinated, you'll want to move them somewhere cooler, ideally in a spot that stays below 60 but above 45 degrees Fahrenheit, at least until they developed a few true leaves. I've said it before, but I don't have a greenhouse or high tunnel to grow my seedlings in. But I do live in an old farmhouse, and my laundry room, ironically, while it's still part of my house, well, it isn't heated. And so it stays consistently cool through late winter and early spring, and it's been the perfect spot for my pansy seedlings to grow on slowly and steadily. I encourage you to get creative with the spaces that you have available to you and experiment with what works best for your situation. Realize that pansies do grow slowly at first, so don't be discouraged if they don't take off right away. It's totally normal for them to take their time, and in my experience, that slow, steady start leads to strong, sturdy plants that are well worth the wait. Step 2, harden off and transplant. So once your pansies have a few sets of true leaves and the outdoor temperatures are staying above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, well, it's time to start hardening them off. Now, if you've never done that before, don't worry. It's just a fancy way of saying that you'll gradually introduce them to life outside so they don't get shocked by the change. After about a week, we then transplant our pansies into repurposed bulb crates. But honestly, you got a lot of options here. You can plant them in garden beds, raised beds, window boxes, patio containers, whatever works best for your space. Now, the best thing about pansies is that once they're settled in, they're actually pretty tough. They can handle light frost, and in fact, those cooler temperatures help stretch out their bloom time, so don't stress if it still feels a little chilly when you plant your pansies outside. For us, when it's time to plant, I space our pansies about 2 to 4 inches apart. That is if you're growing them for cut flower production like we do. The trick to getting those nice long stems for bouquets is to plant them close together. That way they have to stretch upward to grow, which gives you taller, more usable stems. So in our bulb crates, we squeeze in 24 pansies, 4 rows of 6, and they do great. Step 3, growing on. Once your pansies are planted and settled in, it's all about keeping them happy as they grow. Pansies, they love cool, damp soil, so be sure to water often and deeply, especially during dry spells. I mean, shallow watering won't cut it. A good soak encourages strong roots and steady growth. They also appreciate full sun to partial shade, and a little regular maintenance, it goes a long way. If you stay on top of pinching off the spent blooms, well, they'll keep rewarding you with fresh flowers for months to come. With the right care, they'll settle in beautifully, and that's when the real fun begins. We started to see blooms pop up in May, and I'll be honest, at first, they were short, more like the classic pansies that I've always seen in garden beds and containers. But as the season went on, the plants matured while the stems started to stretch, and I was genuinely surprised by just how long they got. By late June and into early July, we have been consistently cutting longer stems, the kind that feels right at home in delicate design work. They've been soft and whimsical, almost sweet pea-like in appearance, and I can see where they'd make even a lovely accent in something like a bridal bouquet. It makes me realize that they're so much more useful for arrangements than I truly expected, and it's part of what's convinced me that pansies deserve a permanent place in our spring crop plan. You guys know by now that I always like to try out lots of different varieties, and while we didn't grow dozens of varieties this year, I did have a few standouts that quickly became favorites. The first is Imperial Antique Shades. Of all the pansies we grew this year, this variety easily produced the largest blooms, and I have to say they completely stole the show. The mix of soft, vintage-inspired pastel and rose shades adds such a romantic, old-fashioned feel to the garden. And what surprised me most is how well they held up as cut flowers. Even with their delicate look, the blooms were sturdy, with thick stems that made harvesting easy. If you love soft color palettes and flowers that make a statement, well, this one's worth growing. Nature Antique Shades. These smaller, more delicate blooms bring such a soft, moody touch to the garden. I love how the colors shift as they open, from creamy caramel tones to hints of mauve, blush, and smoky peach. Their petite size makes them perfect for tucking into arrangements or enjoying up close in the garden. Frizzle Sizzle Yellow Blue Swirl. Okay, this variety is pure fun in the garden. The deeply ruffled edges give the blooms so much texture, and the color combo is unlike anything else. Soft blue, sunny yellow, and those rich chocolate centers. One of my favorite varieties that we grew this year. Frizzle Sizzle Mini Tapestry. This mix was another favorite of mine. The ruffled blooms come in a gorgeous blend of lavender, purple, and gold. The flowers are a little on the smaller side than other Frizzle Sizzle varieties, but just as full of color and texture. I did notice that as the season went on, the yellows really started to shine in this mix. Now, I personally love that cheerful pop of color, but something to keep in mind if you're after more of those deeper purple tones. Brush strokes. If you love variety, well, this one's hard to beat. Each bloom feels like its own little work of art, with unique splashes and flaxen stripes of color. The mix of apricot, peach, gold, lavender, and plum, it brings so much warmth to the garden. The blooms are on the smaller side, but they still add beautiful detail and texture to arrangements. Each one of these varieties that I just mentioned, they brought something a little different to the table, and I'm already dreaming up which ones to grow again next season. Now, if you have a favorite pansy variety that I should try, I'd love to hear about it. So drop a comment below and let me know what's made it into your garden or what's waiting on your wish list. Now, I will share, one thing is for sure, we have been really fortunate this year. We haven't run into many pest or disease issues with our pansies, but I know that they're not immune to problems. While I don't currently have any real-world experience to share with you along those lines, if you are looking for guidance on troubleshooting common pansy problems, or you're simply wanting more variety ideas to add to your wish list, well, I can't recommend enough the Pansy book by Brenda Estrada of Three Brothers Blooms. It's one of my favorite additions to my flower book collection this year. I mean, the images are stunning, the information is clear and practical, and I find myself reaching for it often just to flip through and get inspired. I'll include a link in the description box below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. Now, will these pansies put on another flush of blooms? Will the heat eventually take them out? Well, those are questions only time will tell. And of course, I'll be sharing our experience as it unfolds. But one thing I do know, I am so glad that I chose to grow these pansies in bulb crates rather than planting them directly into the garden. I'm realizing that there's a freedom in doing it this way. There's less pressure, no worries about them taking up valuable space that I might need for another crop. It's just an opportunity to observe, experiment, and learn without the usual stakes attached. Growing them this way has given me the margin to truly pay attention, to watch the full life cycle unfold, and honestly, I couldn't be happier about it. As I look back at my experience with pansies and reflect on what went wrong all those years ago, I'm actually glad that I didn't succeed the first time I tried growing them. Because had I forced them into that overscheduled season where I was already chasing too many things, I might have missed what they really have to offer. Between you and me, there's something quietly powerful about giving a flower a second chance, especially when that second chance comes at a time when you're no longer in survival mode, when you've created more margin, more clarity, more ease in your growing rhythm. This time around, I haven't been putting pressure on them to make them work. I just planted them because I wanted to. And that kind of freedom, well, I think it's made all the difference. So all of this to say that maybe you need this reminder as much as I do, but there's a grace to gardening that doesn't always show up in year one. Sometimes it takes a season or two to come back to the thing that you wanted most, but couldn't quite make work. Sometimes you need space to circle back with more experience, more stillness, more you. Pansies, they've taught me that. They've reminded me that beauty, it doesn't always bloom on your first try. Sometimes it blooms when you're finally ready to grow it well. So if you're building your spring plan and want a flower that's charming, unfussy, and quietly delightful, well, consider giving pansies a try. Whether you grow them in crates or clay pots or tuck them into garden beds or even line your porch with them, they're the kind of bloom that quietly adds joy without demanding attention. And if you've tried growing them before and it didn't go the way you hoped, well, that's okay too. Some flowers just take a little while to find you, but when they do, they might teach you more than you ever expected. Okay, if you're looking for more spring flowers to add to your garden, you got a couple of great options. This video here is all about growing sweet peas and is always a favorite, especially if you love these delicate, whimsical blooms. Otherwise, if you're leaning more toward a no-fuss flower that still brings that wow factor, you might enjoy this video on daffodils, where I share my favorite varieties that we've grown over the years. Some of them just might surprise you and have you rethinking everything you thought you knew about daffodils. I'll link both of those videos down in the description box below if you'd like to take a look. Let me just say thank you so much for tuning in today, and as always, I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye guys.